The crystal wine glass shattered against the concrete patio. 40 guests went dead silent. The hummingbird near the bougainvillea hedge stopped buzzing. The sizzle of steak on the grill cut through the sudden freeze. Ryan stood at the head of the table, his face flushed red, his eyes cold and hollow. He didn't look at his wife. He didn't look at his daughter. He looked straight at his father and spat out 8 words that fractured the afternoon. I wish you had never been my dad. No one breathed. The Arizona heat hung heavy, thick with the smell of charred meat and cheap pride. I sat 3 seats down, my fingers numb against my paper plate, watching the man I married destroy the only safety net we ever had. To understand how a Father's Day celebration turned into a crime scene, we have to go back to the quiet, suffocating months before the silence finally broke. The silence in our Scottsdale rental home was never peaceful. It was heavy, sharp, and cold. Every evening at 6 o'clock, the front door clicked open. The scent of expensive sandalwood cologne drifted into the entryway, followed by the dry click of Italian leather shoes on hardwood floors. Ryan was home. He never said hello. He never asked about my day. He simply walked past the kitchen island, his eyes fixed on his phone, leaving a trail of icy tension in his wake. I sat at the corner of the dining table, surrounded by stacks of paper. My eyes burned under the harsh white light of my desk lamp. As a freelance bookkeeper, my nights belonged to small business receipts, tax forms, and endless spreadsheets. My mornings belonged to the local clinic, where I worked part-time as a nurse, checking blood pressures and changing dressings until my back ached. 14 hours of work every single day, yet my hands always felt empty. Ryan tossed his keys onto the quartz counter. The metallic clatter echoed through the open floor plan. He straightened his tailored blazer, checking his reflection in the hallway mirror. Still hunching over those little numbers, Hannah, his voice rasped, dry and dismissive. It's embarrassing. You spend all week dragging yourself through blood and receipts just to earn pocket change. Do you really think your tiny checks pay for this house? I kept my head down, my pen hovering over a ledger. The insult stung, but the sting was familiar. It was the same script he read every night. I'm trying to help pay for the groceries, Ryan. I murmured, keeping my tone flat to avoid a spark. Prices are going up. Ryan scoffed, walking over to the stainless steel refrigerator. He pulled out a bottle of sparkling water, the glass bottle clinking against his gold watch. The watch was new, a Breitling with a navy dial that caught the light every time he moved his wrist. I knew we couldn't afford it. I knew our joint account was bleeding cash. But whenever I brought up our budget, the wall went up. Groceries? Ryan laughed, taking a slow sip. Please, leave the real money to me. I'm closing big real estate deals this quarter. Important people look at how I live. They look at this neighborhood. They look at what I drive. Your little clinic checks don't even cover the landscaping fee. He walked closer, leaning over my shoulder. The heavy scent of his cologne overpowered the fresh smell of clean laundry on my clothes. He tapped his index finger against my spreadsheet, right over a total column I had been calculating for an hour. You look exhausted, Hannah, he whispered, his voice dripping with false concern. You always look tired lately. It's bad for my image when clients see my wife looking like an overworked clerk. You should be grateful I keep us in a place like this. Everything you enjoy, this kitchen, the zip code, the air conditioning, it all comes from my family's standing. Remember that. He pulled away, stepping toward the hallway. He didn't wait for an answer. He never wanted a conversation. He wanted submission. The bedroom door shut with a firm, decisive click. The lock turned. I sat alone in the bright, sterile kitchen. The air conditioner hummed overhead, blowing cold air against my bare arms. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I looked down at the table. Right next to my tax ledger lay a piece of bright pink construction paper. It was a Father's Day card, carefully folded in half. On the front, our 6-year-old daughter, Lily, had drawn 3 figures with bright crayons. A tall man with yellow hair, a woman with a stethoscope, and a little girl holding a dog. Across the top, written in shaky, oversized letters, it read, "Happy Father's Day, Daddy. You are my hero." Lily had spent 2 hours at the kitchen counter that afternoon, her tongue sticking out in concentration, coloring every inch of that card. She had been so proud. She had left it right by the entryway key bowl, so Ryan would see it the second he walked through the door. Ryan had brushed right past it. He hadn't even looked down. He had pushed it aside to make room for his car keys, leaving a black smudge across the pink paper. I picked up the card. My fingers trembled slightly as I smoothed out the creased corner. The bright, cheerful crayon colors looked absurd under the cold kitchen light. I looked at the drawing of the little girl smiling between her parents. Then I looked at the dark hallway leading to our locked bedroom. A strange, quiet weight settled in my chest. For years, I had told myself that Ryan's coldness was just stress. I told myself that if I worked harder, if I earned a little more, if I kept the house cleaner, the warmth would come back. I believed his words when he told me I was useless without him. But looking at that smudged pink card, a tiny crack opened in the ice. The house was dead silent. Outside, the Arizona wind rattled the dry palm leaves against the window pane. I didn't cry. The tears had dried up months ago. Instead, I carefully folded the card, placed it inside my notebook, and closed my laptop. I turned off the kitchen light, stepping into the dark hallway. The silence was still there, but for the first time, I didn't feel afraid of it. I felt a cold, sharp clarity beginning to take root. The mid-June sun beat down on Scottsdale like a furnace. Sun-bleached patio tiles scorched my shoes. The air smelled of charcoal smoke and seared ribeye steaks. 30 guests hovered around the stone fire pit in Arthur's backyard. Laughter echoed across the lawn, but the air felt thin and tense. Ryan stood near the outdoor kitchen, his blue linen shirt crisp and unwrinkled. He held a crystal wine glass, gesturing to a group of local brokers. "Yeah, German engineering is great, but this new Corvette Z06 is something else," Ryan declared. He pointed toward the driveway, where a jet-black sports car gleamed under the sun. Had to wait 6 months on the allocation list. Worth every penny. I stood by the table, placing grilled corn onto paper plates. My hand stayed steady, but my stomach twisted into a knot. I knew the truth. Ryan hadn't spent a single dime on that car. The title sat inside Arthur's fireproof safe. The registration bore one name, Arthur Vance. Yet Ryan spoke with the smooth confidence of a man who believed his own lies. Arthur stood near the grill, turning steaks with metal tongs. Sweat beaded on his forehead, running down his cheeks. He wore his usual grease-stained polo shirt and work boots. He heard every word. His jaw tightened, but he kept his eyes on the fire. He didn't correct his son. He never did. At 2 o'clock, Ryan tapped his knife against his glass. The sharp chime rang through the yard. Conversation faded. "Everyone, gather around," Ryan announced, stepping onto the stone step. "I'd like to make a toast to the man of the hour." My 7-year-old daughter, Lily, clutched my skirt, lowering her plastic pinwheel. Arthur set his tongs down, wiping his palms on a towel. He offered his son a quiet, tired smile. Ryan raised his glass higher, letting the sunlight catch the crystal. "To Arthur," Ryan began, "a man who worked 40 years in the dirt so his son could reach the sky." A few guests nodded, but Ryan didn't stop. His smile curdled into something cold and bitter. "It's just a shame," Ryan continued, his eyes locking onto Arthur's, that after all those years, you still don't know how to pass the torch. You hold on to every dollar and title. You sit on your empire like a dragon, while I build real success out of nothing. The crowd froze. The laughter died. The only sound left was the low hum of a hummingbird nearby. Ryan leaned forward, his voice cutting through the heat. I wish you had never been my dad. The silence hit like a physical blow. Lily froze beside me, her fingers digging into my pants. Arthur didn't flinch. He stood straight, his broad shoulders squared against the heat. He looked directly into Ryan's eyes, seeing the hatred and hollow arrogance. Arthur tucked his towel into his pocket. He walked past the stunned guests, his heavy work boots thudding against the flagstone patio. He reached the driveway, pulled a silver key fob, and pressed the unlock button. The black Corvette beeped, its headlights flashing. Arthur opened the door, stepped inside, and backed out onto the street. The engine roared once, leaving a cloud of warm dust in the air. Ryan's face turned purple. He took my car. Ryan screamed. He took my damn car. 10 minutes later, Ryan stood on the balcony of our rental home, his phone pressed against his ear. I want to report a stolen vehicle. A jet black Chevy Corvette. The thief is heading north on Scottsdale Road. It's Arthur Vance. He took my keys and drove off. I watched him from the doorway, my chest tight. Ryan, stop, I whispered, my voice trembling. That is his car. You know it's his car. Shut up, Hannah, he barked, slamming his hand against the doorframe. I've been driving it for 2 years. It's mine. 15 miles north. 3 Scottsdale police cruisers tore through the highway heat. Sirens wailed, cutting through the afternoon. The cruisers boxed in the black Corvette, forcing Arthur onto the gravel shoulder. Over the loudspeaker, an officer shouted, "Driver, turn off the engine. Place your hands outside the window." Arthur complied immediately. He turned off the ignition, rested his calloused hands on the doorframe, and waited. 2 officers pulled Arthur from the seat, pushed him against the warm fender, and clicked handcuffs around his wrists. Mr. Vance, we received a report that this vehicle was stolen 20 minutes ago, the officer stated. Check the glove box, Arthur said quietly, his voice steady as granite. Or check your computer. The second officer opened the cruiser's terminal, typing in the license plate and VIN. The screen flickered, displaying official Arizona DMV records. Name of registered owner, Arthur Thomas Vance. Co-owners, none. The officer stopped typing. He looked at the screen, then at Arthur in handcuffs. Sir, you are the sole registered owner? I bought it in cash 6 years ago, Arthur replied. My name is on every piece of paper. The officer unclipped the handcuffs immediately. Mr. Vance, I am deeply sorry. The reporting party is my son, Arthur said quietly. The officer closed his notepad. Filing a false stolen vehicle report is a Class 1 misdemeanor in Arizona. We are issuing an official criminal summons for Ryan Vance today. An hour later, a police sedan pulled into our driveway. I stood on the balcony, watching as an officer handed Ryan a folded white document. Ryan's hands shook as he opened it. His face was drained of color. The bravado vanished, leaving behind the pale, terrified face of a boy who had finally hit a wall. I stepped back from the railing. My heart stopped beating with fear. Seeing my husband receive a criminal summons for lying about his own father shattered the last fragment of respect I had left for him. The illusion was gone. The marriage was dead. And I was finally ready to bury it. The morning after the police arrived, the silence in our home shattered completely, replaced by an unbearable, toxic tension. Ryan locked himself inside the home office, his muffled shouts and desperate bargains echoing through the thin drywall as he pleaded with his criminal defense attorney. He wasn't crying out of remorse for what he had done to his father. He was sweating with raw terror over the prospect of losing his real estate broker's license, his precious prestige, and his place in Scottsdale's high society. I didn't waste a single minute on his panic. While he paced the carpet inside his locked room, I sat at the white marble kitchen counter with my laptop, opening our primary bank portal. As a freelance bookkeeper, reading financial statements was second nature to me. For 6 long years, I had quietly trusted Ryan whenever he waved his hand and claimed he was managing our high-level investments and handling our household accounting. But looking at the cold, unvarnished numbers myself, the grand illusion he had painted dissolved into pure, terrifying horror. Ryan hadn't built a thriving real estate empire. He had built a massive, suffocating mountain of hidden debt. I pulled up 3 separate high-interest credit card accounts opened under his name. The total combined balance glowed in glaring red numbers across my screen: $85,420. The itemized transaction statements were a pathetic paper trail of desperate vanity and artificial wealth. There was a $4,200 charge at a luxury watch boutique in Fashion Square, $1,200 for custom Italian leather loafers he barely wore, $6,000 for VIP bottle service at high-end lounges in Old Town Scottsdale, just to impress clients who didn't care about him. Hundreds of dollars were spent every single week on high-end dry cleaning, valet parking, organic juice bars, and golf club tabs. Then I logged into our joint rental portal to review our housing records. The monthly rent for our luxury 4-bedroom house was a staggering $5,500. Next to the payment ledger, an automatic wire transfer from an external corporate account appeared on the first of every month like clockwork. The account number belonged directly to Vance Auto Fleet. My breath hitched in my throat. Ryan hadn't paid a single month of rent out of his own earnings. His father, Arthur, had been quietly and faithfully covering our luxury lease for 2 straight years. The black Corvette, the gated rental home, the country club membership. It was all funded by the hardworking old man Ryan had publicly humiliated in front of 40 guests just yesterday afternoon. By 10 o'clock, a cold determination took hold of my mind. I packed my leather briefcase, strapped my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, safely into her car seat, and drove straight down to Vance Auto Fleet on Industrial Boulevard. The thick air near the commercial shop smelled of diesel exhaust, burnt motor oil, hot iron, and heavy rubber. The rhythmic, deafening clang of pneumatic impact wrenches and metal hammers echoed off the tall corrugated steel walls. Mechanics in dark blue industrial uniforms moved efficiently between massive commercial semi-trucks and fleet vans. I walked past the bay doors and found Arthur sitting alone in his small, glass-walled office behind the parts counter. The cramped room smelled of stale black coffee, diesel fuel, and old paper ledgers. He sat hunched over a worn wooden desk, staring blankly at a stack of unpaid invoices. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with deep, dark circles from a sleepless night. "Hannah," Arthur said, his voice raspy and hollow as he looked up. He started to push himself up from his chair, but I gently held up my hand, taking a seat directly across from him. "I know everything now, Arthur," I said quietly, keeping my tone steady. I opened my leather briefcase, pulled out 5 printed financial spreadsheets, and laid them flat on his desk. Arthur lowered his gaze to the white pages. His thick, calloused fingers slowly traced the red numbers: the $85,000 credit card debt, the monthly $5,500 rental transfers, the unpaid car insurance policies. He didn't look angry. He looked entirely broken, a father realizing the true extent of his son's deception. "I honestly thought I was helping him." "Hannah," Arthur whispered, his broad chest heaving as he stared down at his desk. "When my wife, Mary, died in that awful highway accident 10 years ago, Ryan was completely lost. I felt so guilty for working 70 hours a week at the shop instead of being home. So I started writing checks whenever he asked. Every time his business strived or failed, I wrote another check to fix it. I thought I was giving my son a safety net, so he could succeed. You weren't giving him a safety net, Arthur, I said, my voice firm yet filled with deep empathy. You were building a cage of entitlement, and I was enabling it by staying quiet and assuming he was acting in good faith. Arthur closed his eyes tightly, leaning his head back against his high-backed chair. What do we do now, Hannah? How do we fix this? We stop enabling him today, I answered with absolute conviction. We set hard, unbreakable legal and financial boundaries. 2 hours later, Arthur and I sat in a high-rise conference room at the law firm of Benson and Associates near downtown Scottsdale. The room was bright, cool, and sterile, encased by floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the desert city. We sat across from Richard Benson, Arthur's longtime corporate attorney, to craft a comprehensive plan that would strip Ryan of his illusions while protecting the family's true assets. First, we addressed the criminal summons. Arthur executed a formal legal waiver regarding the stolen vehicle report. Ryan would not face state prison time, but Arthur firmly refused to use his connections or money to wipe the charge clean. The court would proceed with an official Class 1 misdemeanor citation, forcing Ryan to perform 80 hours of mandatory community service and pay a steep court fine. Next came the structural transformation of Arthur's estate. Arthur signed a newly drafted living trust, the Vance Family Revocable Living Trust. Under the binding terms of the new trust, Arthur officially transferred 100% of Vance Auto Fleet, the commercial real estate properties, and his private savings directly into the trust. He named Mike Sullivan, his trusted operations manager of 27 years, as the sole executive trustee and interim CEO. Ryan was completely removed from the inheritance line and stripped of any automatic managerial succession rights. Then, Arthur looked across the glass table at me. Hannah, I want you to officially oversee the financial auditing and bookkeeper records for the trust. You will manage the monthly distributions for Lily's college education fund. My son will not touch another single dollar of this estate unless he earns it through honest work. To ensure Ryan had a path toward redemption rather than total ruin, Arthur added a strict rehabilitation clause to the trust documents. If Ryan ever wished to work for the family business in the future, he could not step into a comfortable executive office. He would have to submit a formal application as an entry-level mechanics assistant, work 40 hours a week at standard entry-level wages, and complete 2 consecutive years of mandatory financial management counseling. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the thick legal documents were signed, notarized, and sealed inside a heavy manila folder. I drove home as the setting sun painted the Arizona horizon in deep, fiery shades of amber and crimson. When I unlocked the front door and stepped into our entryway, Ryan was standing in the middle of the living room. He held a crystal glass of amber scotch in his hand, his shirt sleeves rolled up haphazardly, his face red and twisted with fury. Where the hell have you been all day, Hannah? Ryan barked, slamming his glass onto the coffee table, so hard the liquid splashed over the glass rim. My lawyer told me my arraignment date is set for next month. My name is going to be published in the public arrest records. My real estate career is completely ruined, and you were out running errands? I didn't utter a single word of defense. I walked slowly to the dining table, opened my briefcase, and laid 3 specific documents flat on the dark wood surface. The first was a certified copy of the notarized living trust bearing Arthur's fresh signature. The second was the printed bank audit detailing his $85,420 credit card debt and the lease payments made by Arthur. The third was a formal petition for legal dissolution of marriage, my signed divorce papers. Ryan stared down at the white pages spread out under the light. His jaw worked silently, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, but no coherent words came out. I looked him dead in the eye, my posture straight and steady. The deep-seated fear and anxiety that had kept me silent for 6 long years had completely vanished, replaced by a cold, unshakable clarity. Ryan stared at the divorce petition, resting on the dark mahogany table. His jaw worked silently, his eyes darting between Arthur's notarized living trust and his own credit card statements. The color had completely drained from his face, leaving his skin a sallow, sickly gray. The faint, sweet smell of scotch on his breath turned sour in the tense, stagnant air of the living room. "Are you out of your mind?" Ryan finally spat out, his voice cracking with rage and utter disbelief. "You went behind my back, to my father? You think you can just throw a pile of paper at me and walk away?" He stepped forward rapidly, his heavy footsteps thudding against the polished wood floor. He reached his hand out to grab my upper arm. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back an inch. I stood my ground, my spine straight, my eyes locked onto his flushed face. "Don't touch me, Ryan," I said. My voice was low, quiet, and cold as desert ice. He froze mid-motion, his hand hovering in the air like a lead weight. For 6 long years, he had relied on his physical height, his sharp insults, and his icy silent treatment to make me shrink into the background. But looking at him right now, I didn't see a powerful, successful man. I saw a hollow shell built entirely on borrowed money and stolen pride. Ryan tried his old tactic, his top lip curling into a familiar sneer. "You step out that front door, Hannah, and you leave with absolutely nothing. This house, the zip code, the lifestyle, none of it belongs to you. You're just a part-time clinic clerk. You really think you can survive in Scottsdale on your pathetic little checks?" I picked up the printed bank audit from the table and held it right in front of his eyes. "I don't own this house, Ryan," I said, every word dropping like a heavy stone into still water. "But neither do you. Your father pays every single penny of the lease. I don't drive a luxury car, but your black Corvette belongs to Vance Auto Fleet. You didn't build a life, Ryan. You built a lie, and I am completely done paying for your illusions." I grabbed my packed leather suitcase sitting by the entryway. I took Lily's small hand into mine. She held her stuffed brown bear tightly against her chest, her quiet blue eyes watching her father without a single trace of fear. I walked out the front door, the heavy oak frame slamming shut behind us with a loud, echoing thud. Within 48 hours, I moved into a sunlit 2-bedroom apartment 3 miles away near the medical clinic. It wasn't a gated mansion, but the rooms smelled of clean linen, fresh paint, and yellow lemon peel. The oak floorboards didn't echo with cold, unpredictable tension. For the first time in 6 years, I slept through the entire night without waking up in a cold, anxious sweat. My entire mindset shifted. I completely stopped viewing myself as a helpless victim of a broken marriage. I stopped waiting for someone else to validate my worth or grant me permission to exist. I took total, unshakable ownership of my life and my daughter's future. I took immediate, concrete daily actions. I registered my own business entity, Vance Financial Services, offering professional tax preparation and bookkeeping for small local shops. I revamped my entire wardrobe, trading my faded, oversized sweaters for crisp, tailored blazers, dark trousers, and clean linen shirts. I joined an early morning yoga class at the neighborhood park, feeling the warm Arizona sun on my skin as I systematically rebuilt my physical strength and inner composure. Meanwhile, reality crashed down on Ryan like a heavy iron door. Without Arthur's monthly corporate checks, the landlord served Ryan a formal eviction notice within 30 days. His credit card accounts were frozen by the banks. The local real estate brokerage firm quietly terminated his contract after his criminal summons for filing a false police report hit the local news. The fair-weather friends who used to toast him at VIP lounges vanished the exact second his gold credit cards declined at the bar. One warm evening, 3 months after our separation, I drove past the old rental house to drop off Lily's wooden school trunk. The large moving truck was parked near the curb, its diesel engine idling with a low rumble. Ryan stood on the dusty concrete driveway, holding a crushed cardboard box filled with his designer clothes. The black Corvette was gone, safely returned to the commercial fleet lot. In its place stood an old, rusted sedan with a dented silver bumper. His tailored suit was gone, replaced by a rumpled, stained shirt. His gold watch was missing, sold off to pay his initial legal fees and court costs. He looked up as my car pulled quietly up to the curb. He saw me sitting behind the wheel, my hair neatly styled, my skin glowing under the warm evening light, my eyes clear, calm, and confident. He didn't yell. He didn't sneer. He just stared at me, his broad shoulders slumped, his hollow eyes filled with a deep, silent shock. For the first time in his entire life, Ryan Vance was standing completely alone in the dry desert heat, forced to face the heavy, unavoidable wreckage of his own making. I shifted the car into drive and pressed gently on the accelerator. The engine hummed smoothly as I pulled away, leaving the dusty driveway and the broken man far behind in my rearview mirror. My heart was light. My hands held the steering wheel with steady, relaxed grace. As I drove toward my new apartment where Lily was waiting, the evening wind blew through the open window, carrying the sweet scent of desert sage and blooming cacti. I took a deep, full breath of the cool air. The long years of quiet suffering were over. The fear was gone. I wasn't running away from anything anymore. I was driving forward into my own life. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant shades of purple, gold, and deep crimson. I stepped out of the car, closed the door, and stood in the quiet evening air. I took a moment to look up at the vast Arizona sky. I felt calm, centered, and completely at peace with every single decision I had made. 2 years rolled across the desert like a slow, steady tide. The scorching Arizona heat still baked the asphalt, but inside Vance Auto Fleet, the air felt entirely different. It smelled of fresh roasted coffee, clean mineral solvent, and honest, grueling labor. Ryan stood near the main service bay, wearing a heavy, dark blue cotton jumpsuit. His knuckles were permanently stained with black grease, graphite, and motor oil. The expensive designer clothes and gold accessories were long gone, replaced by heavy steel-toe work boots and a simple canvas utility belt. Sweat poured down his forehead as he wrestled with a heavy torque wrench, tightening steel bolts on a commercial truck axle under the sharp, watchful eye of Mike Sullivan. For the first 18 months, Ryan had fought the process with every fiber of his being. Every muscle in his body had screamed in protest during the brutal early morning shifts. His fragile pride had bled out slowly on the hard concrete floor as he swept shop debris, hauled heavy transmission parts, and cleaned clogged grease traps. But as the long months wore on, the whining stopped. The fake bravado dissolved into the desert dust. Under Mike's strict guidance and mandatory financial management counseling, Ryan finally learned the true, heavy weight of a single dollar earned with his own sweat and hands. Across town, my life had found its own vibrant, quiet rhythm. Vance Financial Services occupied a modest, sunlit second-floor office downtown, near the medical clinic. The room smelled of crisp white paper, warm roasted coffee beans, and green potted plants sitting on the windowsill. My client list had steadily grown through word of mouth, fueled by my analytical precision, clear communication, and steady numbers. I didn't rush into anything. I took deliberate time for myself, walking in the morning parks, reading books on the balcony, and watching Lily laugh on the elementary school playground. I began recording my daily thoughts, goals, and reflections in a brown leather journal, documenting every small milestone of my newfound financial and emotional independence. Then came the third Father's Day since the wall of illusions finally crashed down. Arthur's backyard was once again filled with the soft, comforting chatter of family. There were no rented caterers, no crystal wine glasses, no desperate showmanship meant to impress strangers. Just simple beef burgers sizzling on the outdoor grill, a sturdy wooden picnic table, and the sound of cold water splashing from the lawn sprinkler, where Lily ran barefoot in the lush green grass. An old, dust-covered Ford pickup truck rattled up the gravel driveway. The vintage V8 engine purred and clicked rhythmically before coughing to a peaceful final stop. Ryan climbed out of the driver's side. He wore faded denim jeans and a plain gray cotton shirt. His face was deeply weathered by the desert sun, his shoulders broader, his posture completely grounded. He carried a small manila envelope in his calloused hand. He walked slowly toward the stone patio where I sat with Arthur, sipping cold iced tea. Ryan stopped a few feet away, looking down at his work boots for a brief moment before raising his eyes to meet mine. The arrogant smirk that used to define him was entirely gone. In its place stood a man who finally respected the ground beneath his feet. "Hannah," Ryan said softly, his voice remarkably steady. He turned slightly to his father, nodding respectfully. "Dad." He handed the manila envelope across the wooden table directly to me. I opened the metal clasp and slid the contents out onto the wood. Inside sat a printed bank statement and a certified cashier's check. His high-interest credit cards were paid off in full. His personal debts were cleared down to the very last cent. "I wanted you to see it," Ryan said, looking directly into my eyes without defense, hesitation, or excuses. "Every single debt is officially gone. I bought the truck with cash. I saved myself from my weekly wages at the shop. No loans. No help. Just my own labor." I looked down at the clean numbers on the paper, then up at his grease-stained hands. A deep, profound sense of closure settled softly and permanently in my chest. "I'm proud of you, Ryan," I said quietly. The words didn't carry any lingering bitterness, resentment, or anger. They carried the clean, weightless truth of a chapter properly and honorably closed. We weren't rushing blindly back into the past. We weren't pretending the deep scars didn't exist or that the broken trust could instantly heal. But as Ryan stepped into the green yard to toss a baseball with Lily, his genuine laughter ringing clear in the warm afternoon air, I knew the cycle of entitlement was finally broken. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the vast Arizona sky in brilliant strokes of amber, gold, and deep violet, I stood by the patio railing holding my leather-bound journal. The evening wind carried the crisp, earthy scent of creosote bush after a light desert rain. I looked across the lawn. Arthur smiled softly, raising his glass in a quiet, peaceful toast to the empty air. Lily chased a bright butterfly near the bougainvillea hedge, her squeaks of pure joy echoing in the warm dusk. I took a deep, slow breath. The heavy shadows of the past were completely gone. I stood there alone in the fading golden hour, completely at peace, entirely free, and infinitely proud of the woman I had become. I held my journal tightly against my chest, feeling the soft leather texture under my fingers. The road ahead was wide, clear, and completely open, entirely my own to travel. I smiled warmly at the horizon, embracing the quiet freedom of my new life. Every step I took felt light, grounded, and purposeful. I was no longer defined by the painful marriage I had left behind, but by the undeniable strength, dignity, and independence I had built with my own two hands. All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.